Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to Breaking the Habit. Today we're going to focus on one of the aspects of recovery that can be used as an indicator. It's really a tool that can be used as an indicator as to how addictive or how aligned to sobriety our behavior currently is. In part because it's really hard to tell. If you think about addiction, it's one thing to know when you're when you're acting out, because we know this is what we need to be staying away from. This is what gets me high. But in the absence of that, you could fall into the category of what they call in AA a dry drunk, where you're staying away from alcohol, but you're not necessarily changing your attitude, your behavior towards others, your character defects. You're not working on that, and so you're still walking around, feeling entitled and having angry outbursts and being narcissistic or manipulative or those kinds of things, right? And so there's abstinence, which is one part of recovery, but then there's sobriety, actively seeking sobriety, and that requires check it again, you see, and that requires it requires for us to be moving further and further away from our character defects and further away from our behaviors that aren't consistent with getting healthy. So let me just check our sound quickly. Is it good? Okay, all right, excellent. Right, so the exercise is simple enough, which is that we take certain things around us that we use as a reflection of our mental and emotional state, right? So what we do is, I'm just thinking about how to convey it to you. Let me read through the preamble on this first, and then I'll give you the actual exercise, right? So firstly, the PCI, or the Personal Craziness Index, is based on two assumptions. Number one, craziness first appears in routine, simple behaviors that support lifestyle balance. So if you think about it, we may have at present an imbalance in our lives, and then we do things that help us try to restore balance. So for instance, we may have poor time management, and so as a response to poor time management, we drive fast, we speed, so as to make up for time that we lose elsewhere, right? And within speeding is a certain amount of craziness, but to a certain extent we may just consider it the norm, or we consider it necessary, or we just consider it routine, so we don't think anything of it. Behavioral signs will occur. The second assumption is behavioral signs will occur in patterns involving different parts of our lives. So in identifying our Personal Craziness Index, we look at various aspects of our lives, not just one. Because it's easy if we said, you know what, in active addiction, I gained a whole lot of weight because I wasn't taking care of myself, and I was comfort eating, and I wasn't, paying any attention to my health. And then you decide to, let's say, go to the gym. Now you devote your time and your effort and whatever into your physical appearance. Now, if you look at your physical appearance as a yardstick for whether you're sober or whether you're of sober thought and mind, then it's going to be really challenging to see the results, because the results may not show up for another maybe week or 2 weeks or a month even. And like if you're looking at fluctuations in weight, or if you're looking at significant gains, or if you're looking at a deterioration of your physical form, right? The feedback on that loop is just way too extended for you to know in the immediate that what you're doing isn't consistent with the life that you want. So we can be caught up in issues of cosmic importance and not notice that our checking account is overdrawn. So again, we might be trying to figure out our lives or think about spirituality and whatever, and then think that these are all steps to recovery, but then we don't take care of the basics, like monitoring our bank balance. If our checking account is overdrawn, we are probably out of socks as well, because we have not done our laundry. If this pattern is pervasive, there's a risk that our lives will become emotionally bankrupt as well. Now, you might ask yourself, but what does my checking account have to do with whether there are socks in my drawer? And the reality is that there are certain patterns of thought that allow us to overlook certain things. So while we need money every day, we may not check every day what our bank account is, and so we ignore that reality. We don't check the level. Similarly, we need socks every day, but not necessarily going to check, okay, how many socks are there still left in the drawer? We just grab one and we move, right? Another version of it is driving and not checking our tank. I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you're driving and all of a sudden you hear the beep, or you see the light go on, and you're like, oh my God, like, how am I that empty? Even though we're sitting in front of a dashboard that is at all times giving us a reading of our tank, we don't necessarily acknowledge it. We may see it, but we don't necessarily take that information in, right? So addicts and co-addicts are particularly vulnerable to the insanity of loss of reality from neglecting the basics, right? So in recovery, people say things like, keep it simple and one day at a time, and often we ignore it as just cliches, the recovery cliches, but there's a deep wisdom behind it, right? The personal craziness index helps you to remember what you need to do each day. This is important because we keep talking about dealing with life on life's terms, and addicts being able to deal with the reality of their lives and being able to manage everyday stresses. And by not taking daily inventory or daily maintenance of our lives, by not engaging in rituals that support our well-being, things start to fall apart. If you take a simple thing like exercise, right? So I stand on the correction, but they did a study and they found that skipping 3 days of exercise means that you lose something like 30% of your fitness level. Like fitness is that susceptible to living a sedentary life. Whereas, so if you want to maintain your fitness level, you need to be working out every day, or at the very least every second day, to keep your fitness levels up. Right. It helps you establish good recovery habits. Without a structured process to keep you on track, cunning and baffling self-destructive behavior patterns will return. Cunning and baffling is the key words here, because one, you're not necessarily going to see it coming, and two, even after it's coming, you're going to be like, how did that even happen? How did I not notice I'm out of socks or petrol or money or whatever, right? And the point is, at that point, it's really too late. It's pointless, trying to figure it out at that point. But what it does do is it gives us an indication of what do we need to reprioritize in order to maintain, a healthy life. The process of creating your own PCI is designed to be as valuable or as value-free as possible. Each person uses his or her own criteria, so this is important. There isn't one universal personal craziness index. So, for instance, if I'm monitoring, the state of my car, like is it clean or is it dirty? Is it, clothes piling up or chips piling up or whatever? That's my personal craziness index. Someone else's might be completely different, because we all have unique habits and we all have certain things that we take pride in. So, for instance, you have addicts who are very pedantic about the appearance of their car, in part because maybe that's how they if you take someone with a let's say a drug addiction, right, who also potentially has a sex addiction, right, there are lots of drug addicts who are very well off, and perhaps the outer appearance, their clothes, their car, and whatever is all part of tools that they use to maintain their sex addiction, right? So they're not necessarily going to let those things fall into disarray, right? So it's important for you to develop your own personal craziness index. Right? Yeah. So we generate these by looking at behavioral signs, which through our own experience, we've learned to identify as danger signs or warning signs that we're losing it, right? Or that things are getting out of hand, or that we're burning out. Thus, we'll judge ourselves by our own standards. So, if you think about, even something like your level of fatigue, that's not something anyone else can judge for you. It's only something that you're going to feel intrinsically, right? So, it takes a fair bit of honesty to work this tool, but the payoff is immense, right? So I'm going to go through some of the various aspects. As I said, we'll look at various aspects, and I'll go through some of them. I have 10 here that we can go through, and it's recommended that you select 7 of them, so that you have like a really well-rounded view of your life overall. So the first one is physical health. The ultimate insanity is to not take care of our bodies. Without our bodies, we have nothing. Yet we seem to have little time for physical conditioning. Examples are being overweight, abusing cigarettes or caffeine, not getting regular exercise, eating junk food, getting insufficient sleep, and having a lingering sickness. When do you know that you aren't taking care of your body? So again, this is going to be very personal. How do you know you're not taking care of your body? Only you're going to know if you have been putting off going to the dentist, or if you should be going to a doctor but you haven't. Only you're going to know if you have a rash but aren't treating it. Others may see that you're overweight. So there's certain things that manifest externally, but for the most part, again, it requires you to be honest with yourself. So give at least 3 examples here, right? Cigarettes and caffeine. Caffeine is both of them. Many of us have justifications for, I really need to work, so I need the caffeine, or I just love my coffee. We'll say things like that. Not necessarily recognizing the impact that it has. I met a guy who was drinking 6 double espressos a day, and complaining that he had trouble sleeping. As crazy as that may seem, there just, for him in his mind, wasn't a link between his consumption of caffeine and his inability to sleep, right? And this is just the nature of our various addictions, that we overlook reality, we lose touch with reality. And so while coffee is known to keep you up, it's perfectly understandable that that link just isn't made, right? Right now in South Africa, we have lockdown, and the sale of cigarettes is banned, and so people are paying around $200 for a box of cigarettes, which ordinarily would cost, I don't know, maybe like $30 or so, right? And so here again, we begin to see the sort of insanity coming out in terms of what are we spending towards our habit. And it's easy to say, like, yeah, but cigarettes are only like $20-30 a day. It's not that much, or it's only 2-3 rand a smoke, right? But now it's 4 or 5 times that, right? And people are buying it. The people are still buying it, even though there's been such a drastic jump in price. And so here again, you can see that even though there's an opportunity to get clean, simply because it's for the most part no longer available, there are still people reaching out on social media and that kind of thing, asking who has cigarettes, and can I get some? And so willing to break lockdown, willing to break the law, willing to endanger themselves. And I mean, if you get caught without a valid reason for being outside, I think the fine is something like 1,000 rand. It's somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 rand. Reports vary on based on the activity, but these are all risks that people are willing to take around cigarettes, right? So physical health is the first one. Second one, transportation. How people get from place to place is often a statement about their lifestyles. Take, for example, a car owner who seldomly comes to a full stop, routinely exceeds the speed limit, runs out of gas, doesn't check the oil, puts off needed repairs, hasn't cleaned out the back seat in 3 months, and averages 3 speeding tickets and 10 parking tickets a year. Or the bus rider who always misses the bus, never has change, forgets his or her briefcase on the bus, and so forth. So what transportation behaviors indicate that your life is getting out of control? Again, give 3 examples. So this one, is pretty self-explanatory, and they give some great examples here. And especially nowadays, cars come with a service book, and so the book needs to be stamped. And so a simple thing to do is just check, have you taken your car for its scheduled service, right? And they even tell you what interval. Some cars go as far as to bring up a little service light on the dashboard. So if you have your service light showing, then consider that perhaps it's an indication that your life is a little bit out of control. Environment. To not have time to do your personal chores is a comment on the order of your life. Consider the home in which plants go unwatered, fish go unfed, grocery supplies are depleted, laundry is not done or not put away, cleaning is neglected, dishes go unwashed. What are ways in which you neglect your home? Give 3 examples. So for each of these things, give 3 examples for it. And so this is a great one because it's so easy to see. It's easy for you to see, am I making my bed up or not? Is the washing piling up? You look at the laundry hamper, is it piling up on the dirty side or the clean side? Either way, it's basically indicative of the fact that there's a lack of order, there's lack of routine, there's a lack of system in our lives. Another one is the dishes. And here it's easy to go, but I don't like doing the dishes, and I've never raised really doing the dishes, always had a maid, always had this, always had that. It's completely irrelevant whether you had a maid or not had a maid. Right now, the question is simply, are there dishes standing there unwashed? Right? Because that's part of maintaining a healthy and clean environment. Right? Work. Chaos at work is risky for recovery. Signs of chaotic behavior are phone calls not being returned within 24 hours, chronic lateness for appointments, being behind with promised work, an unmanageable in-basket, an in-tray or an inbox, and too many irons in the fire. When your life is unmanageable at work, what are your behaviors? So one of the reasons why work is so crucial for recovery is more often than not, work constitutes the largest part of our day. Most of us work 8-9 hours a day, right? And so it provides us structure, it provides us income. One of the huge triggers for addicts is financial instability, and so we have to pay special attention to how we get our money in. And in the absence of healthy work habits, our income is at risk, and when our income is at risk, it stresses us out and potentially affects our sobriety. So here again, you can use some of these tools, and now we have, with the advent of technology, you have the ability to see, have I responded to emails? If I'm not going to respond to the email, then perhaps I can set a reminder to do it later. But Google will even tell you, for instance, how many days since you've received the email and not responded to it. So there immediately we get, there's a feedback loop. There's a constant feedback loop. The choice we get to exercise here is, do we ignore the warning sign or do we pay attention to it? So yeah. this, to a certain extent, you can also start to gauge whether or not there may be co-addictions present. So if you think about not returning phone calls and I'm just looking at the thing here quickly. Not returning phone calls and too many irons in the fire. That could potentially be, if you look at the not returning phone calls, it may be consistent with the behavior of an under-earner. And so it may fall in the category of not following up with leads or not pursuing ideas, or that even fits with being behind in promised work, right? So we tell potential clients, no, I'm gonna call you back, or I'll email you the documents as soon as I get to the office, or as soon as I get home, or I'll WhatsApp you, and part of the problem is because we don't observe healthy boundaries, we in our minds we say, okay, yeah, I'm using my personal phone for work anyway, and clients do communicate with me via WhatsApp, and so I'm gonna be on WhatsApp later, so it's fine. They can just WhatsApp me later, and I'll WhatsApp them back. Not necessarily appreciating that when we're at home, we may not be in the mood to do work, regardless of the fact that we've committed to it. And then on the other side, having too many irons in the fire could be an example of workaholism. So as you look at these examples of how your life might be unmanageable, it's going to be useful for you to also look at what other addictions are present, right? In part because if we want to be truly sober, and if we want to really be drawing closer to Allah and not turning to other things for sources of comfort, then we need to be aware of what those things are. Also, when we have undiagnosed addictions that run concurrently, it puts us at the risk of relapse, because it doesn't allow us to become sober in our thoughts and our behavior and our attitudes and things like that. Interests. What are some positive interests besides work that give you perspective on the world? Music, reading, photography, fishing, and gardening are examples. What are you neglecting to do when you are overextended? So I suppose just off the top of my head, a simple version of this would be, just seeing that your garden is overgrown. It hasn't been weeded in a while, or your plants aren't getting the proper nutrients. So there's maybe bugs and things happening, or you lose touch with things like reading. You just see your books piling up, going unread, or if you're into photography, then maybe you aren't editing your pictures, or maybe you aren't posting, or however you want to look at it. Or simply that you're just neglecting it. So another useful tool to do is just go through your house and look at what equipment you have lying around relative to hobbies that you used to pursue. So maybe you have a digital camera that you bought to pursue photography but haven't picked up in 6 months. Or maybe you have your fishing equipment that's gone unused for the last 2 years. All indicative that you're neglecting your hobbies. Social life. Think of friends in your social network who provide you with significant support. These should be friends, not your partner or family members. This is important because it's easy to hide in the gray area of, no, but I see people, I'm not alone, simply because you live with other people. That doesn't count as socializing if you live with them, right? So when you become isolated, alienated, or disconnected from them, what do you typically do, right? And again, give 3 examples. So here it might be that you find yourself falling into behaviors like binge watching series, for instance. Right? You could have gone out with your friends, but you choose not to. You're just sitting at home. Maybe skipping 2-3 days of personal hygiene, like you're not showering, you're just like vegging out on the couch, or neglecting your fitness routine or whatever. And so it depends also how you involve friends in your life. Some people involve friends around their hobbies, and so as their hobbies suffer, so do their social interactions suffer. So just for you to give thought, and then a useful technique here is to simply take your phone, for instance, and open whatever messaging app you use, and to see, because that'll give you a clear indication, when last have I been in contact with this friend or that friend or whoever. When last have I been to this activity, or attended that gathering, or that class or whatever. Then family or significant others. So we covered the social side of it. Now we're doing the family. When you are disconnected from those closest to you, what is your typical reaction? For example, are you silent or overtly hostile or passive aggressive? Right. So this one is a little bit closer to home, in that it requires us to be honest about how we treat our significant other, our partners, or our children, or even our parents, when we are disconnected from them. And this here, again, the nature of addiction is that it's not rational. So just because you have people around you and you want love from them, it doesn't mean that you're actually open to receiving that love from them, right? So just because you're at home and you're feeling lonely doesn't mean you won't behave in a spoiled or entitled manner and demand that people spend time with you, right? Or nag them to spend time with you. You could say that, no, but if I'm doing that, then it means that I do want them to spend time with me, and I am trying to get that need of loneliness met. But, and here's the trick, consider for a moment how you've asked or how you've made the request, because perhaps you've done it in a way that actually guarantees a no. Like, most people don't actually respond very well to being nagged or to being told what to do. So anytime we do that and we claim that we wanted a favorable outcome, it's time for us to reevaluate, because it may give us an indication that what we in fact wanted was to be neglected, was to be abandoned, was to feel betrayed, was to feel even further hurt. Because again, when we feel those ways, more often than not, those feelings are used as fuel for our addiction, right? Or it may even tie into feelings that we're comfortable with. Like as we read in the adult children material, that we seek out people who will fulfill our abandonment needs. Why? Because abandonment is what we know and what we're comfortable with and what we need to feel, because that's the way the world makes sense. Right? And you can see this simply by how you respond when people compliment you. Right? And this isn't so that you can develop a sense of pride or haughtiness or anything like that, but and especially someone who has low self-esteem and struggles to receive, when being paid a compliment, won't just accept it and choose to feel better about themselves. They'll say things, oh, it was nothing, or they'll say like, you would have done it as well, or everyone does it, it's no big deal. And so they're always dismissive of acts of affection, acts of recognition, things like that. So this is one of those exercises, or this part of it may be useful for you to, in fact, ask your family members, how do I actually behave towards you? But again, appreciate though that they might not want to answer, and so it's not for you to press them, because if you are someone who is hostile whenever you don't get your way, then chances are they're not necessarily going to be just open and forthcoming, because they might know you are going to act out or rage. Then finances. We handle our financial resources as much as we do our emotional ones. Thus, when your checking account is unbalanced, or worse, overdrawn, or bills are overdue, or there is no cash in your pocket, or you are spending more than you earn, your financial overextension may parallel your emotional bankruptcy. What are the indications when you are financially overextended? Right. So again, you look at these things that we mentioned before, either being in overdraft, or having nothing in the account, or spending ahead of actually earning the money, and so you're constantly in debt, even though in your mind you think no, but some more money is coming in, but you've already spent it, and so it just becomes like a vicious cycle. And especially in instances where the money we loan is earning interest, because then we don't just need to earn what we spend, we now need to earn what we spend and cover the interest on top of that for the duration that we incur the debt, because obviously we live in a society where more often than not the interest is compounded. So just it gathers a momentum of its own, right? This is what they're saying here is actually quite useful, because sometimes we don't recognize that there are patterns that we engage in, and so our financial state being depleted may be a clear reflection of our emotional state being depleted, simply because it means that if you just think from a behavioral point of view, to fall into financial depletion, one version of it is that we don't check our account, and so we don't know, and so we find ourselves at some point running on empty. Similarly, emotionally, we don't always check in with ourselves. How do I feel, and do I need anything? We just keep doing for others. We just keep going, charging ahead, as if we have like endless reserves, right? And this is the idea behind the personal craziness index, is to help us start to develop the identification of not just the pattern, but how it plays out and where it plays out in various aspects of our lives. What is the implication of that on our emotional state, our spiritual state, our physical state, our sobriety overall? Right? There's certain people, especially those who look at energy healing and the interaction between technology and our emotional state. While many may think that it's irrelevant or unrelated, there have been several instances where they find that the emotional state of a person reflects in the devices that they own. So, for instance, someone who is stubborn and just doesn't, they refuse to see, the error in their ways, and they just don't want to look at the reality that they're facing, might find themselves that like the lights go out in their car, like just constantly they just keep blowing lights, and from a metaphor point of view, one could say that not having lights is a failure to see, right? Like an inability to see, because you're now constantly in the dark. And these things may seem a little bit far-fetched, and I'm not saying that you have to believe in them. I personally find them to be useful because I've had certain experiences around this. I, for instance, had there was a time when I was just crazy busy. I had several projects running all at the same time, and I was starting to really reach this space of depletion, until one day the charger on my computer blows. I just I can't use it anymore, right? Because obviously once your computer's dead, you need to recharge. So my charger blows, and I'm like, oh my god, great, whatever, go buy a new charger. Wasn't even using it for a day, that one blows as well. I'm like, oh my god, is there something wrong with the electric? So I moved to a different plug, buy another charger, and use it for a while, and again that one blows. What is going on? And now I'm moving offices and places that I'm working and buying new chargers. I must have gone through like 6 different charges, until I stopped and I thought, what is going on? Like, what might this reflect, about me and my state? And then I recognized that I wasn't actually taking time to recharge. I was overextended and burnt out. And so I stopped everything I was doing and I just took some time to myself. And without changing the electricals in my house, without finding a new location, without anything else, like, I just, from that point on, didn't have any more trouble with my charges. And so, whether you want to buy into the idea or not, I personally, I use it because it's the way in which we use our devices is very much a reflection of our behavior. If you think of a simple thing, like even just consider your phone right now, right? Just look at what percentage it is. When last did you charge it? So many of us go through life, or we go to bed, plug our phone in, so we wake up 100% fantastic, and then we use our phone throughout the day, and more often than not, come the afternoon, we're already running on low, and so we need to plug in again somewhere, or we just run it till we're completely depleted, right? And what they found with rechargeable batteries, and with especially the batteries in our phone, they discovered that to really take care of your battery, to ensure the longevity of your battery, it's better to charge more frequently in shorter bursts than to just leave your phone plugged in overnight. And similarly, as humans, we require a recharge throughout the day. If we're only going to recharge at night, then more often, or more likely than not, we're going to find ourselves depleted and burnt out. And if you think about, like, from an Islamic point of view, it's not a foreign concept. The whole idea of taking a kailula in the afternoon, and that's not just because it was the Arab custom at the time, right? And because it was hot in the Arabian Peninsula in the middle of the day, and so that's why people slept. We have to consider that there's a really greater wisdoms in the teachings than just on face value. So relative to our devices, it's useful for us to look at it and to see what it says about us. Then spiritual life and personal reflection. Spirituality can be diverse and can include such practices as meditation and prayer. Personal reflection includes keeping a journal, working the 12-step program with daily readings, and getting therapy. So what sources of routine personal reflection do you neglect when you are overextended? So do you cancel your therapy sessions, or do you not do your daily readings? If you think about the whole idea of having a wird, right, or litany of prayer that you engage in on a daily basis, are you engaging? Are you reading your wird every day, or do you neglect it, right? Then other addictions or symptom behaviors. So this is where I mentioned, the whole idea of having co-addictions or cross-addictions. Compulsive behaviors that have negative consequences are symptomatic of your general well-being or the state of your overall recovery. When you watch inordinate amounts of TV, overeat, bite your nails, any habit you feel bad about afterwards, these can be signs of burnout or possible relapse. Symptom behaviors are evidence of overextension, such as forgetfulness, slips of the tongue, and jealousy. What negative addiction or symptom behaviors are present when you are on the edge? Again, give 3, right? So just to round up, the idea, I've mentioned 10 here, and if you want this in text form, you can find it in The Gentle Path Through the 12 Steps by Patrick Carnes. So what they do is they suggest that you take 7 of them and then write down sort of a marker for each of those things. So you're going to rate yourself perhaps out of 10 each day for for your performance around these things. So you look at the dishes and it's like, oh, okay, now it's just a cup and a plate today. Okay, I've been doing well with the dishes, so my craziness index there is maybe just a 2. Or on some other day you see it's like piled to the roof and like, oh my god, it's a 9. So there's 2 one day and a 9 the next day, and so you can start to monitor this. If you want, you can record it and map it, and you can see like, where does it spike and when does it spike. And obviously over time we get to see our behavior relative to, like, so for instance, women often reference their behavior relative to their menstrual cycles. So you can see, perhaps even are there hormonal implications in how you behave. How does it affect your compulsive behavior or your obsessive thoughts, right? Because obviously it affects our emotions and affects hormones and affects us in so many different ways. And then we can look at overall giving ourselves a score. So at the end of each day, let's say you have 5 things and you're rating it out of 10. You can see, okay, am I in the 0 to 10 or 10 to 20, 20 to 30, like that. Classifying, if you're using it as on the low end, that you're healthy. So like if your personal craziness index means that at 2 you're doing really well and at 9 you're suffering, then obviously scoring between 0 and 10 would be optimum health, versus 40 to 50 means you're at high risk of a relapse. So we ask Allah to grant us opening in our understanding of our behavior, and the honesty to look at our behavior and to be just rigorously honest about what's healthy and what's destructive, to grant us insight to see patterns across various aspects of our lives and various facets of our behavior, to identify any underlying behaviors that are unhealthy, that Allah grants us just the insight to understand it, and then also the tawfiq, or the ability to rectify it. So one of the beautiful things about understanding or monitoring the personal craziness index is it gives you a very clear indication of what the next right thing to do is. If a dish is standing piled high, then okay, right, it means I'm not taking proper care of my environment. Okay, I need to clean, or if it's your physical appearance, then okay, cool, I need to groom. And likewise with anything else, spirituality, finances, whatever, right? And all of these things tie in again to an indication that we may be overextended. And so it also invites the opportunity for us to reaffirm that we need gentleness breaks, time out to play with the kids or pet an animal, or have some tea, or we went through that whole list. I think it was in either the second or the third video, one of the earlier videos we went through it. Maybe 5 or 6, I'm not sure. But the idea nonetheless that we take a gentleness break as well. And this, especially these last 10 days of Ramadan, as much as we are attempting to exert ourselves, we need to be mindful also of just what our body needs, so that we are able to continue in a healthy fashion. So with that, I bid you farewell, and till we speak again tomorrow, inshallah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum.